Alrighty, folks, live from the studio, I'm Jimmy Selesky. And today we're going to talk about something you've all probably seen at this point, or at least heard about. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you haven't actually seen it, because nobody actually sees things anymore. But you've certainly heard other people tell you about it, who probably also haven't seen it as well. So at some point down the chain of command, you're getting fourth or fifth hand reviews of what some guy told some other guy what he heard some other guy say about what he thought some guy said. Now, of course, I am referring to the viral and trending, apparently controversial and polarizing, and in my opinion, pretty freaking awesome, commencement speech at Benedictine College by NFL kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, Harrison Butker. Now, it is important to get a couple points of context out of the way from the jump. First point of context, Benedictine College is located in Atchison, Kansas. Now, I did actually look into this. Kansas is a place. It is a place, and Atchison, Kansas is a place within that place. I was trying to locate it near other cities. I was like, oh, is it just outside of Kansas City? Is it, that's the only city I know in Kansas. Wichita is a city. It is apparently, what I can tell by looking at Google Maps is it looks like it's like an hour and a half outside of everywhere. So Atchison, Kansas is its own thing. I think the biggest place of note that I saw it being like relatively close to is the Kickapoo Reservation. But yeah, so it's like about hour and a half outside of Kansas City, Topeka, the whole nine. You get it. We understand states. It is a Catholic college. Let me repeat that. Benedictine College is a Catholic university. Okay, it's important we remember that before we get into the clip. Kind of, I guess, apparently. Other points of note. This is a more personal point of note. I don't want anybody sitting here accusing me of being biased or a homer. This show is based in Baltimore, Maryland. I am a Ravens fan through and through. Harrison Butker, again, is the kicker for the Chiefs. If anything, I should be very partial against this dude based off of the playoffs that just occurred a few months ago. If anybody can remember in the annals of history of the NFL playoffs back in January, where the Ravens pathetically lost to the Chiefs. Justin Tucker is my kicker, baby. JT, greatest kicker of all time for the Ravens. He was actually at one of my gigs the other day. He asked me for my autograph. He was like, oh my God, are you the live from the studio guy? I was like, yeah, dude, calm down. Keep it on the DL. You can take a picture of me, but try not to bring too much attention to me, man. I'm trying to keep this channel below 500 subscribers, please. And he was cool about it. But Harrison Butker is also a phenomenal kicker. Definitely top in the NFL, probably a top guy in the history as well. And he also, unbeknownst to me, I wasn't aware of this, but apparently he is pretty known around the league for being very open about his opinions and what he thinks. He's not afraid to say what he thinks. And he is a very traditional man, as I've gathered. He is a devout Catholic, as I've gathered, and you will as well. And he speaks his mind. And as is the norm, a lot of people on the internet hate that. Why are you speaking your mind, person? Why are you not saying the things that you're supposed to say? Don't you know it's not cool, man? Don't you know that this is not going to get you a bunch of likes and reposts? What is wrong with you, Harrison Butker? Why don't you become good at something? Like me. So let's jump into this speech. I want to start here. This is kind of in the introduction section. Some would call that an intro. And here, he just kind of addresses the overall state of what's going on around us at this current point in time. So let's pop in on this.
Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values and media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. You know, the difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition.
Now, I guess it's pretty obvious why I decided to start there, aside from the fact that that's also where he decided to start. This is like the first minute and a half of the speech. But as far as intros go, I can't think of a better way to set the tone than what he just did. Within the first minute of this speech, you know exactly what you're in for, like it or not, you know? And that's not typically been my experience with these type of things. Now, I never graduated college. I went for 1 year, so I've never personally witnessed a college commencement speech. I've never been commenced. But my general experience with these types of things, or what videos I've seen online of other speeches, is speakers tend not to call the quiet part out loud. They tend to be a little bit more vague, tiptoe around things. You know, this time in our country is difficult and our leaders need to blah, blah, blah. And Harrison Butker is like, dude, abortion, really? This degenerate culture, gender ideology, in vitro fertilization, what? And you're like, okay, this guy came to play. I mean, this is a Catholic university, so like, this is kind of the place to do it. But I mean, he's a man. I didn't realize this. I didn't realize how much of a Catholic he was. But you know, he is basically calling out that, like, we as Christians, I am a Christian. I'm not a Catholic. I'm Greek Orthodox. Look it up. We have a different Easter. But, you know, these are things that I think, as he says, people in polite society are not very familiar with hearing a non-political figure, non-religious figure espouse unabashedly religious beliefs. But forget about, you know, mainstream celebrities and things like that. I mean, this guy, Harrison Butker, is an NFL player. All right? He's not some conservative commentator. He's not Jordan Peterson. This is a kicker in the NFL. And we're used to hearing athletes say their opinions, but usually when you hear an athlete speak their mind always coincidentally aligns with the mainstream narrative. You're not really used to seeing a guy get up on stage and say kind of all the things that, in his own words, you're not kind of supposed to say. You know? You're not supposed to play in the NFL and say you don't believe in abortion or IVF, which is in vitro fertilization. I'm not sure what his problem with that is, but regardless, you're not supposed to like say that, you know? And he just says, look, and I quote, these are things we're told not to talk about in polite society. And, you know, let's not confuse niceness with cowardice. You know, we're told to be nice and just let things happen. But at a certain point, when you allow yourself to be run over and coerced into silence about your beliefs and told that your beliefs aren't cool, man. Hey, man, why aren't you saying something more cool? and he's calling it out for what it is. And he kind of dives deeper into that in this next clip, which we'll pop on right now.
This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. The difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it. As members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, it is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Don't be mistaken, even within the church, people in polite Catholic circles will try to persuade you to remain silent. There even was an award-winning film called Silence, made by a fellow Catholic, wherein one of the main characters, a Jesuit priest, abandoned the church and as an apostate, when he died, is seen grasping a crucifix, quiet and unknown to anyone but God. As a friend of Benedictine College, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron said in his review of the film, "It was exactly what the cultural elite want to see in Christianity: private, hidden away, and harmless." Our Catholic faith has always been countercultural. Our Lord, along with countless followers, were all put to death for their adherence to her teachings. The world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We fear speaking truth because now, unfortunately, truth is in the minority. Congress just passed a bill where stating something as basic as the biblical teaching of who killed Jesus could land you in jail. But make no mistake, before we even attempt to fix any of the issues plaguing society, we must first get our own house in order, and it starts with our leaders.
This being a Catholic university, it's obviously centered around religion. That's where this entire speech is coming from: Christianity, Catholicism. And so when he's speaking about that movie, Silent, I think it was, which I've not seen, about this guy, and then he dies, and he was like a devout Christian or Catholic his whole life, but nobody knew. He was never really vocal about it. It was just private and whatever. And how this was like the model, ideal version in like mainstream society's eyes of how a Christian should be: private, harmless, out of the way. And he's calling BS on that. He's calling out what we all understand to be true, which is that Christianity, more than any other religion, and I would almost say uniquely, Christianity in this country, definitely uniquely, it is the only religion that it is socially acceptable to mock outright. That's just the truth. There is no other religion that you can be so blatantly critical of, so blatantly make fun of it, whatever word, blaspheme or whatever term you want to use, and nobody bats an eye. Nobody cares. You can call Jesus fake all day, call him whatever. You can say anything you want. You can put him in cartoon. I'm not saying you shouldn't be allowed to do this. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just pointing out that you don't see this with any other religion. You really don't. I mean, okay, Scientology, that's not a religion. That's a fucking cult. If we're talking about like real religions, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, you're not going to see people feeling so comfortable to just outright trash their entire belief system in anywhere close to how it's done with Christianity. I mean, Islam, are you kidding me? Can you imagine just, it was like a major controversy when somebody like drew a picture of Muhammad or something. Because they don't do that. You can't do that. Okay, so now nobody does that anymore. And now it's like if you try to do it, they won't even put it on TV. They censor it. This is offensive to Muslims. Okay. Does anyone give a shit when people just trash Jesus all day? Nobody cares. Oh, you're offended by that? Fuck you, you dumb Christian. Nobody cares. I don't actually care myself. Again, I'm just noticing Judaism, the Sabbath day, they're not allowed to like use electricity or work, which by the way, I just want to say, I do find it hilarious, honestly, that it just so happens to be the Jewish religion where they have this like very, very specific, precise set of laws on a particular day. And they've spent the past 1,000 years coming up with loopholes and ways to work around it. I think that is so on brand. I'm sorry. It's like God is like, all right, dude, no work, no using electricity. I don't think God said I don't think God knew about electricity back then. He didn't ever mention it. No this, no that. And they're like, well, God, you didn't technically say I couldn't watch TV if I turn it on before midnight. And God's like, shh, you fucking Jews. You got me again. I'm playing around. But notice, even that kind of joking around strikes you a little bit as different than if I were to sit here and make fun of some Christian practice and call them on brand. So just notice how much your defenses are raised when you're criticizing another religion or another group of people that practice a religion versus Christians and Christianity. That's the point. How you just felt during that joke is my point. Now, moving on into the speech, he progresses into being basically unapologetically Catholic and practicing that in your everyday life. Now, here's where we really get into the meat and potatoes of the speech. Finally, because this is really what got the most attention, was his address specifically to the women in the audience. And before I tell you what he said, why don't I just show you what he said, and you decide for yourself while listening to me decide for myself.
For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. She's the primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She is the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no. As a man who gets a lot of praise and has been given a platform to speak to audiences like this one today, I pray that I always use my voice for God and not for myself. Everything I am saying to you is not from a place of wisdom, but rather a place of experience. I am hopeful that these words will be seen as those from a man, not much older than you, who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we see around us are normal.
All right. That was the clip, that what we just watched right there, that drew all the commotion. Maybe that surprises you. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe that did strike you as controversial. I watched that clip, and the first thing that comes to mind is, you really think this guy doesn't respect his wife? Holy shit. I mean, he's literally, it's the only point during the speech where he's like, brought to tears, genuinely, just discussing how important his wife is to him in his life. And they met in middle school, band class. I mean, what is this, American Pie? Classic. They're middle school sweethearts. And he's talking about his wife and how vital she is to their life and their children and their family. And then he delves into an address, I guess, specific to women. And he says the thing you're not supposed to say. And it's a thing that I have found to be fairly true, which is, congratulations on your accomplishments. I'm sure a lot of you are looking forward to a successful career. Many of you will have that, but I'm sure, and he says, and I quote, most of you are thinking about your future marriage and your family. And this is another one of those things that in modern polite society, you are not supposed to address. He refers to the idea that being a homemaker is a bad thing. He refers to that as a diabolical lie. And unfortunately, I agree. I think here's a take for you. I think it's actually sexist that in modern polite society, we consider the traditional female role as lesser than. That role that has been played by females, by women, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we look at it and say, yeah, that was stupid. No, if you guys want to do something important, what you have to do is play the male role, which has always been traditionally, being the quote unquote breadwinner, going out and getting a job, working your ass off 40, 50, 60 hours a week to put food on the table. And so basically what we told women is, oh yeah, that thing you did that we all have mothers and they raised children and taught them and all these things, made homes and all that stuff was so stupid. If that's what you want out of life, that's stupid. No, the only way a woman can prove her worth in society is to do what the men do, which is go get a job for some other asshole and give 40, 50 hours of his time away working for someone else. Or if you're one of the few lucky people, have your own business, which is a different thing. But for most people, there's a lot more employees in this country than employers. Wouldn't make sense the other way around. So for most people, the ideal picture that has been painted in society today is that both parents have full-time jobs, likely working for some other douche, and then their kids are babysat by someone else the majority of the week. So both parents are out of the house, slaving away to make someone else money so they can bring home a portion of that. And then they have to spend a significant portion of that for someone else to watch their kids in the meantime. And that's called progress, folks. See, people always want to talk about how, well, back in the day, a man could have a regular middle-class, working-class job and support a whole family, have a home and support a wife and children. And it's like, yeah, that's because back in the day, and this isn't me saying I'm against women entering the workforce at all, or saying they shouldn't be allowed to. And that's not what Harrison Butker is saying either. He doesn't say none of you women should consider anything other than being a wife and mother. He says, no, a lot of you will go on to have successful careers, but most of you probably are looking most forward to your family and your role in that situation. So this isn't me railing against women in the workforce. This is me saying the truth, in my opinion, what I find to be the truth, which is, back in the day before women were in the workforce en masse, the salaries for men were based on the idea that men needed to make enough money to support a household because, in general, they would be the only person in that household that's working. And if you were 23, 22, 24, whatever, in your early to late mid-20s, whatever, it was assumed that when you're going out and getting a job, you're not trying to make enough money to support paying for a room in a townhouse with 6 other dudes in the city. It was assumed that at the age of 25, 26, you probably have a wife and kids on the way and a house, and that's what you're basing your salary off of. So that's why the salary was set that way. Well, now what happens is, now we have 2 people in the house that are both still trying to make enough money to support one household. So instead of one person in the labor force drawing a salary to support a household, we have 2 people in the workforce still drawing a salary to support one household. So from the eyes of the corporations and businesses and things like that, this was the best thing ever because now they've doubled the workforce for the same amount of money. And the kicker beyond that is childcare is incredibly expensive. So now not only that, but now an entire other industry has been created where since both parents are out there trying to make the amount of money that 50 years ago would have been made by one of them, now they still have to take a portion of that to pay someone else to watch their kids in the meantime. So they're actually worse off. They're actually worse off. And this is all based on the idea, again, pitched to women predominantly, that wanting to be a wife, wanting to be a mother is selling yourself short, that you're not going to be happy unless you go out and, work like a man, do what a man does. This very sexist, patronizing idea that the only role in society that matters actually is the male role. I disagree with that. I think that we have an immense amount of respect, or had an immense amount of respect, for the female role in society. When you look at how pensions were set up, how the wife would get half even after the man dies, they saw it as like, hey, you're his wife. You are as entitled to half this pension as he is. Alimony, things like that, all favor the woman. We had an immense amount of respect and understanding for the female role and how vital it was in society. And then, we said, fuck all that and pitched something supposedly better that now everybody wants to sit here and talk about how no one can afford rent or a home or childcare. And it's like, well, I mean, this is what we're talking about. And he's just giving women the insight to say, look, if what you really want is a career and to be a career woman, then great. And that is the case. I feel like that's kind of been the case for a while. But don't let them tell you that that's what you have to want. Because even in my own personal experience, I have found that, in early 20s, things like that, I actually came across a girl that used to record here, a different podcast, actually shared a Facebook status that she had made 13 years ago when she was 21. And it said, I can't imagine being married with children. What a beige life. Like, what a just boring life. And mind you, she just recently had a child. She's like in her mid-30s now. She just had a child a year ago. She's married now. And she shared that status being like, wow, imagine what 21-year-old me would think about 34-year-old me. And I couldn't help but reply and be like, wow, this is such a perfect illustration of every 21-year-old ever versus 10 years later. Not every one of them, but you do find that kind of towards the late 20s, there is this natural shift where women go, all right, actually, I kind of do want to get married and have kids. Like the career, getting, you graduate college and it's fun. I got my adult job. I got my real job. And then you realize that it's bullshit, everything, all that shit, office job. It's like you get there and you're like, oh, this is all it is. So this is the rest of my life. Okay. And then you naturally strive for something more. And that's just something that I think should be addressed. I think it should be addressed. I think no one benefits more from convincing women that the only viable role that they can play in life is to be a worker bee for the system, just like the men have done since the dawn of time. And it has effects on so many different levels. It's a destruction of the family. People are having less kids because it's less and less viable to raise them or support them or to even own a home or anything like that, because our current system has transformed all of society into a labor force. And now, going out and working for someone else again is seen as this like virtuous, awesome, highest tier of success, versus having a solid family where the man goes, or maybe it could be the other way around. Maybe the woman goes out and is the breadwinner, where the father spends. I mean, like, it doesn't matter who's doing what. The point is that everything in society has been geared towards convincing you that the only way to make your life worthwhile is to do something for us, not for yourself. Don't have your own family and your own kids. That's boring and stupid and selling yourself short. No, what you need to do is go and get a $50,000, $60,000 a year salary for this fucking asshole, make him money, while he raises his kids and everything like that, and his wife is able to stay at home. But no, you motherfuckers work for me. I'm your daddy, both of you. Send your kids off somewhere else. Let them raise them. You work for me. I don't think that's a good thing. Nobody really actually thinks that's a good thing, but we've been told to believe that it is. People want to center in on this one particular portion of the speech primarily. And I see why they are, because people love to take what someone says and spin it out of context and tell you that they're saying something else because they don't like the sound of it or it contradicts what their comfortable belief is. But again, this guy told you from the jump, I'm going to tell you the uncomfortable truth. And that isn't an uncomfortable truth. The uncomfortable truth is that it's a natural thing for men and women that at a certain point your priorities shift towards a family and those roles. It's a natural thing that you can't deny, because it's not a decision. It's not a social construct. That's what they do. They try to convince you that all these things are social constructs, and that's the reason why women have been traditionally the homemaker. It's like, no. When you get to my age, I'm 31. These things tend to follow a timeline that is undeniable. It's like hitting puberty. Like you get to like your mid-teens and you just hit puberty. Your thoughts shift, your body changes, whatever. I've watched in my late 20s into early 30s how magically every woman I know in my life, not every one of them, but most of them, have this magical shift towards like, all right, it's time to have kids. And that's not all just society telling you. I mean, society is more anti-kid than it's ever been in history. Really. Kids are seen as like a burden. Like, you'll literally hear women in the abortion debate refer to, a fetus as like a parasite or something. Like, we've never been more anti-kid in human history. And yet still, there's something that clicks in the majority of even the most anti-traditional marriage, kids, family, lifestyle type of woman that goes like, all right, I really want a baby. And that, again, that's just the reality. And all Harrison Butker is saying is Do not let them tell you that that is wrong or that it's not enough. Do not let them lie to you and tell you that being a homemaker, being a foundation for the family and the children is a subpar role, submissive role, and selling yourself short. Don't let them tell you that, because no one benefits from you thinking that than them. They want you to work for them, not your family. So, people don't like that. But in general, across history, people don't like the truth. People actually, there's few things in life that people hate more than the truth. They'll kill you over it. Ask Jesus. Ask Harrison. So next thing, he goes into the men. He talks about men and the lies that they have to contend with as they come up. So let's take a look at that.
To the gentleman here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well. Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better.
All right. So that's for the boys. That address was for the boys. And I would say that's probably comes second to the woman thing. The woman thing, again, is what people are primarily focused on. But let's not overlook that what he said about men and their battle that they have to contend with at this time in history is also, I think, a fairly controversial point, which is that masculinity in Western society, as we've talked about on this show plenty of times, and we will again right now, briefly, masculinity is seemingly being systematically targeted and vilified in mainstream culture. I think that's undeniable. He talks about gender ideology overall. He passes upon it. Just the idea that there is no such thing as necessarily gender roles in general is not just an attack on masculinity, but an attack on both sexes, and what makes a man and what makes a woman. The idea of masculinity, as I've said before on this show, seems to have become synonymous with toxic masculinity, where they become one and the same thing. Kind of like how right-wing has become synonymous with far-right. You never hear somebody, a commentator who's just a right-wing guy. Like, oh, right-wing guy Ben Shapiro came to college. No, it's always far-right. Far-right Alex Jones. Far-right Ben Shapiro. Far-right Candace Owens. Far-right this. There's no such thing as just right-wing, because anything right of center is extremist, apparently. Similarly, with masculinity, you rarely hear the term masculinity addressed in any flattering fashion. The connotation has become synonymous with toxicity. And that is a direct assault on society itself. Because just as much as we discussed the female gender role and how vital that is for society and how that has been attacked in a different way, where oddly enough, we've attacked femininity by telling women that the only way that they can be deemed as respectable, successful human beings is to assume the masculine role, the traditional masculine role of going out and working and providing. And then at the same time, we've told men that them being masculine or them striving for masculine things and exhibiting masculine characteristics is toxic. So we've basically told women to be men, and we've told men to stop being men. And that's odd. And it's not accidental. He talks about just the absence of men in households, fatherlessness. If you actually look at like real data, which we did not do today, I didn't feel it necessary to do so. But if you like look at like numbers, just numbers, one of the best, if not the best predictor of success versus lack of success in life for a child, as measured by pretty much anything, like the amount of money they make when they get older, their likelihood to not go to jail or be criminally, prosecuted, or their likelihood to have, a higher level of education and not drop out of school. There's almost no more correlated thing than whether or not they grew up in a two-parent household. And as we know, two-parent household really means, single mother, or do you have a dad? I mean, there are single dads out there. I know like one or two people in my own personal life. I know that exists, but primarily when we're talking about a single parent, it's the mom, which means that fatherlessness is ever increasing. And we know this to be a horrible thing for society. So not only has the role of masculinity been removed from men, but we've also seen men themselves be removed from an increasingly alarming level of family units. And of course, to go out and say that, to go out and imply that children need fathers is also seen as like, oh, you can't say that. What are you saying, that a single mom can't raise? Oh, I'm not saying that a single mother is incapable of raising a child. I have single mothers in my family. I am saying that it's not ideal. Obviously, the ideal situation is a two-parent family with a mother and father who are in a committed, loving relationship to each other. Obviously, that's ideal. That doesn't mean it's the only way, but, there should be a striving for that. And when you see an encouragement in society of the overall, and this is my favorite word he uses throughout, and I think he says it right in the intro, degenerate culture. And that's what this is. That is what we are promoting. We don't like hearing it. We don't like saying it out loud. But when you look at virtually every tenet or value that is pushed in mainstream culture, it is all centered around self-indulgence, instant gratification, kind of just narcissism in general. It's all about you. It's what you want. We're not allowed to say obvious truths. And if you notice, the only things we're allowed to encourage are the most degenerate values imaginable. And so what he's speaking to is kind of the purposeful removal of God and morality from society in every way. We've told women to be men, and I'm sorry, women make shitty men. We've told men to shut up, and a quiet and meek man is a shitty man. So we've made men shitty men, and we've made women shitty men. We've encouraged degeneracy, and we've told Christians in particular to be, bashful about their beliefs. I cannot imagine if a Jewish speaker went up at a Jewish university and spoke to Jewish values unapologetically and preached all the things that Jewish people believe. I could not imagine, especially if a Muslim speaker, a Muslim athlete, went to a Muslim college or university or, like organization in general, and just spoke to traditional Muslim values. I could not see people attack, and I hate to break it to you, but I don't think Muslims are big fans of abortion either. They're even less of a big fan of homosexuality and promiscuity and all the above. So, but a Muslim would never get this type of blowback. Because okay, well, they're Muslim. They're allowed. That's their beliefs. You can't criticize them for their beliefs. But if you're a Christian, fuck you. You're not allowed to believe what you believe. Every other religion is allowed to believe what they believe. Every other religion is allowed to practice that and, preach that. But Christians, no. There is no society that is more open to different lifestyle choices than Western culture, European Christian society. And maybe that's not always a strength. It is a strength to allow people to live their lives. And that's the nexus of his speech. Do not allow niceness to become cowardice. To tolerate something means to put up with it. I can tolerate your lifestyle choices. I believe that you shouldn't be persecuted for being immoral in ways that don't harm other people around you directly. If you want to be gay, be gay. If you want to have a bunch of kids with a bunch of different women, do that. Pay child support, but do that. But that's tolerating it. The moment we shift from tolerating it to saying, oh, no, actually, no, this is just as good. Oh, just because you're getting married and having kids, that makes you more responsible than someone who's having kids by 6 different women and never married and whatever. No, yeah, I'm saying that one is better than the other. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'll tolerate the person who's doing the other thing, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's on par or ideal or anything close. And that's all he's asking Christians and really just people in society, because this isn't a Christian belief exclusively. These are values that are held by a lot of religions. Aside from having kids with multiple different wives, that seems to be a big thing in Islam. But outside of that, the general moral code that he's espousing that Christians believe in is a similar moral code to every religion. It's all based on morality. And the general ideas are in alignment. But only one religion in specific seems to be the one that's not allowed to actually talk about their beliefs and their morality. It's not popular to do so, and that religion just so happens to be the majority religion of the country. So I think overall, I look at this speech and I think I think it's a phenomenal speech. It doesn't help that I agree with most of it. Like I said, I don't agree with all of it. Like I don't see the problem with like in vitro fertilization. He talks a little bit about like how Catholic birth control is bad. Like you should never play God with having children. I don't know about that. Like, there's 2 different ways to look at it. It's like, okay, if you already have like 8 kids and you don't want to have a 9th, like, I don't know. Is that a sin to like use some type of birth control? Is pulling out considering birth control? I don't know. Or I guess it's mainly aimed at like just people who are having casual sex outside of a committed relationship and using birth control to prevent having a kid. Well, I think that's much more preferable to not using birth control and having a kid outside of a committed married relationship. But I guess his point is that you shouldn't be doing that. And so it's like, okay, I agree with, premarital sex technically being a sin. I'm not sure if birth control is, though. So that like, I don't agree with everything he said. I really don't see the problem with like getting in vitro fertilization if you can't get pregnant. Maybe he's talking about something else. I don't know. But hey, if that's what Catholics believe, that's what Catholics believe, and that's what he believes, that's what he believes. But that's the point. You don't have to agree with everything someone says to see where they're coming from and agree with some of what they say. So I think this is a pretty kick-ass speech. I think it's refreshing. I think the reason it got so much attention is exactly because it's an uncomfortable truth or a series of uncomfortable truths that you're not used to hearing in mainstream society. It's kind of like a wake-up call to hear a non-political public figure be the one to say it. And I think this is, I think we are watching and have been watching, as he references in this speech as well, we have been watching a gradual shift back to traditional values. I think we ventured so far off into this progressive, postmodern, nihilist, nothing is real, everything's cool direction that people are longing for something of structure and substance. And we are rediscovering all these traditional values for the first time again. People are like realizing like, oh, wait, no, actually, this is pretty solid. Like whatever they're doing is ridiculous, kind of. So I think that's a good thing. I think it's happening very subtly. And I think these are examples of this. And it's always growing pains. People are always going to push back against it because they want you to have said what they want you to have said as opposed to what you did say. It's easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled. So people have a natural resistance to changing their mind or hearing something that they disagree with. But that's all adaptation and evolution is. So I think this is a good thing. Even if you don't agree with it, even if I didn't agree with it, I would still think it's a good thing that these type of voices exist in society because there is certainly no shortage of people in modern society saying the opposite of what he's saying. So I don't think we need another celebrity, another athlete, another politician or whoever getting up on stage and saying all the things we're used to hearing, all the things that are safe, popular opinions. I'm glad that there are people like him that are not afraid to say what he said because there is a shortage of that. But anyway, folks, yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, I guess. Watch the whole speech for yourself. It's only 20 minutes. Form your own opinions. I cannot recommend that enough. Whenever a hotly contested topic or a viral thing comes up, before you form an opinion, before you commentate on it, before you judge someone, watch it for yourself. Because for every one person in the world that is saying something, there are a million people trying to tell you what they said. And it's much easier to sort through the thing that they said than the millions of things people are telling you they said. All right? So that's a good way to keep a clear mind and a more thorough understanding of the world around you and block out all the bullshit. So let's keep doing that. Let's carry that energy into the weekend. My name is Jimmy Selesky, live from the studio. Leave us a subscription. New content every Monday through Friday. Like, comment, whatever you got to do. Till next time, folks. Peace.